One of the most feared spirits of Irish folklore. She is a harbinger of death and doom. She appears in one of three forms: a young maiden singing sweetly to lure people in, like a siren song, or a full-figured matron, or a wretched old crone. In all of her forms, she is draped in a long grey cloak, and her eyes are bloodshot red from the constant weeping. But the one unmistakable trait she bears that will always signal her arrival is the horrid shrieking that deafens the ears. The Banshee. She is a warning that death is near. Last week's video was on the Irish legend of the leprechaun. In today's video, I'm going to delve into another figure of Irish folklore. But before we begin, hit that like and subscribe button, or the Banshee will come for you. The name Banshee is derived from Old Irish for a woman of the fairy mound. Her name is connected to the various mounds of earth around the Irish countryside, known as tumuli, which traditionally cover a grave or a number of graves and were said to be home to the spirits of the dead. The Banshee is a supernatural being of Irish or other Celtic folklore whose wailing at night is believed to foretell the death of a family member of the person who hears the wailing. She is usually heard before she is seen. Her screams are so high-pitched that no one would dare to wish to witness her. There have been incidents where the Banshee cried for a person who was in perfect health, only to be found dead within a week from a freak accident. The majority of her visits are at night, with a few taking place at noon. In all her three forms, the Banshee always has long silver hair. She is sometimes seen brushing her hair with a comb, and for this reason it's become a superstition to never pick up a comb lying on the ground for fear of being taken away by the fairies. It is believed that she only appears to a select number of families of only Irish origin, although similar forms of her have been seen in other cultures as well. The earliest record of the Banshee traces back to the 8th century, which was based on a tradition where women sang sorrowful songs to lament someone's death. These women were known as keeners, and because they accepted alcohol as payment, they were believed to be sinners, and their punishment was to doom them to become banshees. According to the mythology of the Banshee, if she is seen, she will vanish into a cloud of mist, and this vanishing will create a noise akin to a bird flapping its wings. There are tales of battles being abandoned by soldiers after they heard wailing in the woods, just before fighting with their enemies. They fled in fear of the thought that it was the Banshee signaling their impending death. Unfortunately, these soldiers that fled were usually killed by their enemies, their own armies for desertion, or by the elements if they stayed in hiding, and this would only strengthen the belief in the legend of the Banshee. While the most common belief of the Banshee is that she is relatively harmless, as she serves only as a warning of death and does not cause death itself, there have been other manifestations of her that are more terrifying and believed to be more malicious. There is a legend that the Banshee's sister spirit, Leanan She, or Sweetheart Fairy, is more malicious. She sought the love of mortal men, and their desire for her was so intense that they were driven to madness and ultimately destroyed. There is also a similar manifestation of the Banshee known as the Beine, or washing woman, which is more associated to Scottish folklore than Irish. Instead of wailing at night to warn of a death, she would wash the bloody clothes of the person to die in a local water source, and sometimes she would actually wash her own bloody clothes instead of someone else's. Some people have dismissed the Banshee legends, claiming the wails are just barn owls or vixens at night, both animals who do wail quite loudly. But there are a few famous stories of the Banshee sightings. The Banshee also liked to cry at the crowning of a true king. One reported case of this happening was at the crowning of the legendary Brian Boru, who overthrew the O'Neills and began the O'Brien dynasty. Possibly the only example of a human Banshee appearance was in 1437, when a woman purporting to be a seer approached King James I of Scotland and correctly predicted his murder at the instigation of the Earl of Atholl. And in 1801, the Banshee paid a visit to the Commander-in-Chief of the British forces in Ireland. He had attended a party at Dublin Castle and invited a few guests back to his home in Mount Kennedy. His guest, Sir Jonah Barrington, and his wife woke up at 2:30 a.m. to what he described as plaintive sounds coming from outside his window. His wife and a maid were also awoken by it, and the sound later turned into the name Rossmore being screeched 3 times loudly. The next morning they were told that a servant, having heard odd sounds from Rossmore's room at 2:30 a.m., entered to find him dying. There are still sightings of the Banshee and experiences of hearing her wails to this day, but what do you think of the Banshee? Do you think her wails are merely forest animals? Have you ever seen her or heard her wails? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. Stay spooky, everyone.